You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Head, a Star Wars show and Season 2 of Visions. Of course, this will be a day long remembered or maybe long forgotten. You know, it's funny about this, too, because we've been making this thing, or I've actually been joking about this for quite some time, but there was a time where we didn't even know they were going to do a Season 2 of Visions, which I find kind of interesting, you know, because it was actually, it was talked about for a while, it was speculated, it was, you know, all kinds of stuff, but nobody really was sure if they were going to do it, and then they announced it. They gave us the whole date. It's funny too because one of the chats that Ronaldo just put in, he said, "I'm ready for Daryl's rant. I have my popcorn and everything."
As promised.
And then let's see. Oh, this is interesting. You're not going to be very happy though. It says, by the way, another scoop. Season 3 is in development.
Ronaldo.
You know, that's something that I didn't actually know, though. Like, I didn't even realize that there was a Season 3. I mean, they just dropped Season 2, and now... But here's some interesting things, though. Let's see. Let me actually get this. I want to get this from my notes. I actually wrote a couple of notes down here.
Two?
So the studio behind this was actually Hispanic, and it's the first time that a non-Japanese studio animated a Visions episode. And then the crew that basically did this also did Tales of Arcadia, Troll Hunters, Incredibles, WALL-E, Ratatouille, Cars, and many more. And it was written and directed by Rodrigo Blas and created from concept to script at Algiri, which is the studio that did it. So yeah. So what'd you think? All right, let me go first. So I actually like this episode for a couple of reasons. Because I really enjoyed, first of all, I love the animation in this thing. It was so different and just so unique. And it was just, like, actually looking at it from an animation standpoint, I just thought that it was incredible and very unique. But the story that they presented it and the way that they did it, where you had this Sith Lord that was basically coming after one of his former students or whatever it was, and then she was kind of resisting, and then the whole idea behind the fact that, you know, she was trying to do this whole, like, painting in this room, and then there was some darkness in there, and that was basically reflecting the light and the dark that she was feeling, and just the way that they handled that. One of the things that I at least appreciated about this season starting out is at least I understood the story. Because there was a lot of episodes last season where, you know, I didn't really understand what I was watching. And this one, even though it was done in kind of an artsy way, I at least understood what I was watching.
Yeah, I agree with you that I will say some aspects of the animation were phenomenal. Especially like how they revealed the Sith Lord, you know, that was, you know, those characters look really, really cool. Kind of gave me like Knights of the Old Republic Reverend type of, you know, vibe.
Yep.
So I like that. I enjoyed that aspect of it. That was it. Yeah, that's all I got for you. I'm sorry.
This
like,
is gonna be.
Well, I'm glad you understood the story. I'm glad you got something out of it.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I actually thought finally there was some clarity here. I mean, granted, I mean it's not gonna be But it's anime, and anime is never really. I mean, the problem is you're not an anime fan, and
Right. The
that's
only anime I'm a fan of was Tina Turner.
Tina
That was
Turner.
it.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that the imagery and the symbolism and just all the different ways in which they actually approach this, and then at the end, when she ignited her yellow, but then she also ignited the red, which was basically symbolic of her actually going, no, there's light and dark. And the painting that she was doing was sort of reflecting everything that was going on. I mean, I thought it was masterfully done. Ronaldo says, I love this episode. It looked beautiful. The Sith looked awesome. The Sith were actually really cool in this thing. The Sith
they were really cool.
And
yeah, like look at that. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that was like the highlight of this whole stupid thing. I mean, when she like knocked the paint over, and I guess she was using the force to hold it, and then it just kind of, I mean, there were some little things like that was kind of cool, but the transitions, I mean, it just, yeah. Once again, like I said this last episode, I don't want to have to think too much. Like, I don't want to have to decipher.
It's called visions. That right there is implying like a vision, like it's not basically put out there just like like all the other ones. It's called visions.
Well, so that's my whole point, though, because like my thing is this: is like we ran on and on and on about where's the story,
Last season I would agree with you. This episode, though, I caught the story right away, and honestly, I didn't really have to think too much about it because, I mean, I don't know. To me, the imagery was actually fairly obvious. Now, part of that could be because since we've seen season 1. I didn't really have any preconceived expectations about this one. You kind of know what you're going in for. And I don't know. Now, last season, let me ask you this. Last season, you went and you actually watched all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we did the episode-by-episode breakdown. And I remember you even watched them. Like, some of them you would watch again so you had the episode fresh in your mind or whatever. But, I mean, for the most part... Mm-hmm. You had seen them all, though, at first. And then as time progressed, when we did the first 2 or 3, you had just seen it. But, I mean, by the time we got to the 4th, 5th, and 6th, you would rewatch it again. So did you actually watch all of these? Or did you only watch the first one? Okay.
I only watched the first one, and I just watched it today. Like, I even saved it for today. Like, I didn't even, do it on May the 4th.
I think they're only... Yeah, no, that makes sense.
This one's like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's only 15 minutes. I was like, all right, cool. And I just... it
could be worse. It could be an hour.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to do it. I can tell you right now. I would shut this thing off so quick. And that's the thing, though. It's just like, it really... The animation at times holds your attention and you want to see, but then it's like, oh, this painting has darkness in it and it's only reading darkness. Why? And oh my God, like, really? Like, I don't want to see, like Bob Ross, the Sith Lord. Like,
well, I mean, I admit that I had to, because I had to think about it and I had to try to figure out why, why were they, what was up with the whole, because like at first, I don't want to put this, like when I was first watching it, it basically was like, okay, I wasn't really sure what was going on. Like first I was struck immediately by the animation because the animation was so different and so unique and just frankly, just stunning. That at first I was kind of wrapped up in it, to be honest. And then I went from there and was like, okay, I'm going to try to catch what the story is now. And the whole like painting thing versus when the Sith Lords came, at first I was like I was hesitant to try to connect the two because I thought maybe it would be too obvious. Until I realized that what it was her being a former Sith and her rejecting the Sith. And they never really, the only thing is, and I think that this is one of the things that you talked about a lot last season, was the fact that last season, I remember you made the comment that you would probably enjoy these more if there was a little bit more context.
Yes.
You know, and I think
that's my biggest thing is like the context of it. It's like, okay, we see her, she's laying down, she's having this little nightmare, little dark side BB-8 rolls up on her. Okay, taps her on a little metal arm, wakes her up, and then she's just like, oh, hey, buddy. And then it's just like, okay, let me just go grab some coffee, and then oops, I spill it, I use the fork, and it's some things are kind of cool, but it's like, okay, where are we going with this? Then she walks out the door, now she's in this cave thing. It's like, what? Like, where's the context in any of this? Like,
well, and that's it. I mean, it sort of jumps out at you, but you actually have to be, I think, aware of it. It's not like there's going to be some sort of a crawl. There's not going to be for instance, we don't know why she actually left the Sith, and we don't know why the Sith went to try to capture her either. What importance? I mean, the main Sith guy kept talking about, if you kill me or whatever, you're the master or something like that. But, I mean, there really wasn't any context about this. And this was the problem I think that you and I talked about last season, was we almost wished that instead of doing these unrelated, whatever, right, that they would actually have like a cohesive, like maybe do Star Wars in the style of this, but have some sort of a story that you can latch onto.
Yeah, and I don't mind the episodic nature of it, where like the stories are connected to each other. I don't mind that at all. I mean, my thing is it's just like, okay, like gives me a little exposition as to why we're here and what's happening.
Right.
So that way I can, like, that's what I don't want to have to guess and think about, like, oh, well, maybe the Sith Lord was her father, or maybe he's an early riser. I don't want to have to sit here and try to figure it out. Like, okay, she left the Sith Order, like, was she once a Jedi at one point and then one Sith and then decided to leave them both? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many questions and there's so much. And then, like you said, just the transitions, like we go out of a door and all of a sudden we're in this cave and it's like, okay, now what? And then, the Sith Lord pops up. Who are these other two? Are they apprentices? Are they other Sith Lords? I mean, like, you just throwing stuff out here and you're just like, here, deal with it.
And, well, there's a couple of things. Number one, how fun would it be? I mean, I would feel sorry for the guests, but how fun would it be to actually get one of these guys that actually did these things?
Oh my goodness. Listen.
Just so you could just be like,
especially when you tell me it's been directed. Like, it just doesn't look directed at all to me.
Oh, now that I would disagree, actually. I mean, again, Ronaldo chatted in some stuff, because, again, I think it depends on, well, first of all, he has this funny comment. He's like, because you talked about Bob Ross. He's like, Darth Ross, a Star Wars legend. Star Wars legend. But this is good. He said the symbolism of her trying to erase the darkness from the painting as a way to erase her dark past was great. And that was one of the things that I latched onto that I absolutely love, was that juxtaposition. Now, this is something that he...
if we knew she had this whole dark past to begin with.
Well,
that's what
she
I'm
was
saying.
a Sith,
it's like,
though, I mean, it's kind of implied.
We don't know that initially. We don't know it initially. It just says Sith. Like, okay, we don't find out that she was once until a little bit later. But it's like, when she wakes up, she just, hey, little guy, and then she's all of a sudden just Bob Ross all of a sudden. Like, okay, like, how do I know that you were a Sith Lord at one point? I mean, sure, you got your arm lopped off. Heck, you could have been a Skywalker. I mean...
Well, it's one of those things, too, that it wasn't until the Sith confront her and then you sort of pick up and they say, hey, you left. And
exactly. Like, that's my point, so...
Well, this is another one. He says at the beginning, I missed this. She's sleeping in the only dark spot of the place, and she's clearly having nightmares. That's another symbolism I loved, and that's true. I did not even pick up on that part of it. But I
See what I'm
think,
saying? You see what you have to pick up on to just derive all this stuff. That's all
well,
I'm saying. Is
but
that
again, you know, it's so now here, and I hope, and I'm going to be a little bit of an advocate. I hope you can understand David a little bit more now. Because
as far as
you
what?
sound like David when he complains about Andor, and you're like, no, dude, you have to understand this and do this. And David's like, well, I don't really want to go through all that. And then we say, all right, well, you know,
Well,
Andor's not
that's
for everybody.
but at least there's a story attached to it though.
To
Like
you.
no, there's context. It's like, okay, when you see this stuff, it's not like there's things that are framing around it that causes an action. Like there's for every action there's an equal reaction to something. So it's like, okay,
You can't
this
compare
is
it, though.
happening.
Because Andor's like a
You're
whole story thread with, I might add, a character
Exactly.
that's already been established. I'm just talking about the
Exactly.
attitudes, though.
But the attitude is derived based upon context though. It's like if I have a context of something, I can then it's like, okay, I can glean like, okay, this is how this person might feel because of this. But if you just show me like some little girl that's sitting here with a, a little metal arm or something like that, and she wakes up to this little ball and she's like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna start painting now. It's just like, okay, this is how she starts her day. Maybe she just likes to, maybe she likes to paint. She's into watercolors or something. I don't know.
You know what's funny about
I don't want to have
this?
to go through a therapy session because, oh, look at the symbolism of the hurt and anguish she feels. And let's look also at like the trees that she's painting. Are they happy trees or are they?
The funny
Who
thing
gives a-
about this is the fact that this is exactly how we started off last season. Because that one, you didn't actually start liking an episode, I think, until like episode 5. I think that one you
4,
legitimately,
4 or 5,
it's 4 or 5. Where you're like,
yeah,
all right, this
yep.
I could get behind. I like this.
Because it gave me something.
Right,
It was
because
like,
it was a
okay.
little bit more. And again, this is something that, and this is one of those reasons why I didn't want to like watch them all at once. I want to experience a single episode and then talk about it and then go on to the next one and
Sure.
experience that, because they're all going to, as we saw in the trailer, they're all going to be wildly different. Some of them I get the sense that they're going to be a little bit more like what we're used to, or at least more like the ones from season 1 that we're like, okay, yeah, this is cool. I can latch onto this. And then there's the other ones that were a little weird, like the whole kid that was trying to be a rock star and perform for Jabba.
Yeah, that. It's like, what is this?
I mean, it was, for what it wasn't one of the worst ones. I mean, there was a couple. There was like 1 or 2 last season that I remember just going. There was one in particular, I wish I could remember which one it was, where I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just, and again, it comes down to, and I actually agree with you in that sense, that I really wish that they would maybe make these episodes like another 5 minutes longer and just give us a little context.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't mind the symbolism, and I don't mind, some of the other stuff. It's just, if you're going to go episodically and you're going to drop us in a different, I guess, realm, then I think that maybe just a little bit of context would probably take some of that away. Some of the...
Yeah, and because that's all it really lacks from, like, okay, even if you want to make it like kind of sketchy kind of how it is, like it's almost like it looks like it's a rough draft or something like that, fine, but at least give me like, I can hang with that. It's like I have to pick a struggle here. I can not know the story, but everything kind of matches, so I can maybe pick it up easier, or give me more of the story and I can accept the fact that it's a rough draft, so to speak. But you can't do both and then want me to like, oh, this is a great episode. Like, like I agree with you. I agree with what you said the other day. I probably would be okay if I did acid, which makes me wonder, did you do acid before watching this?
No, I think a lot of what it comes down to is this season, because where the difference between the opening episode of last season versus this season, for me, even though it was kind of the same thing, you didn't like it at all. I really enjoyed it because that was really done in the true Japanese anime style because it was done by a Japanese studio. And I'm used to that kind of, I'm just used to that kind of storytelling. I guess that's really what it comes down to, is that if you're not used to the anime storytelling, you're probably not going to get into it. And this is certainly not something that I would introduce people if I were trying to get them into the anime style of storytelling.
Right. Absolutely.
So there's that.
This ain't it.
But the difference between, for me, last season and this season was last season, you know, you had that one guy and he had that weird like Sith umbrella like saber thing.
Yeah.
Remember that thing that was weird? And
Yes.
he went into this village and, you know, he was an interesting character and he was kind of cool and I liked the character, but I didn't understand what the point of that story was. You kind of understood, but not really. But this episode, I think I enjoyed more because at least I understood the symbolism, the story, what it was trying to convey, and everything else. But I mean, I could certainly say to anybody that, you know, maybe didn't enjoy it that much or whatever, where if it was a difference between enjoying and not enjoying, all I needed was context, well then yeah. Now it's true in the anime storytelling style, that's part of it. It's not as spelled out for you. And that's why, you know, some people really dig it, some people don't. And again, there are some where it's kind of weird because, you know, I was brought into it by Jay, you know, a guy that he was still is actually a good friend of mine. We used to play in bands together and stuff like that. And he was the one that actually kind of brought me into that world. And it's not like I'm some anime super fan. I'm not watching it constantly and keeping up with, you know, every little thing. But it is stuff that, like the latest thing, although I would actually have people watch this, is the new Ultraman animated series that's been on Netflix. I mean, it's really good. But it's also easier to follow. You know, it doesn't quite... It's not like symbolic. It's really more just kind of done in that style and everything else. So Ronaldo's got a few more chats, unsurprisingly. This is his moment, man. I mean, we almost do these for him. Actually, he was the reason why we started doing these in the first place.
Yes, he's the catalyst for my suffering.
Yes, catalyst for your suffering. And that's kind of like, it's sort of like Ronaldo's reward for being, you know, such a
long-standing member of HIT.
Long-standing, dedicated member of our little community is that, you know, we're doing this for you, buddy. He says, I can understand Daryl's point of view. There are some anthologies that don't have a lot of context. I like that they kept the mystery, but I can understand if it doesn't work for somebody else. You know, and that's kind of where I'm at, too. I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not 12. I'm past the point of trying to convince other people to, you know, love something
like what I like.
I do. Yeah, or hate what I hate, you know?
Right,
but,
exactly.
You know, I mean, that's part of what's cool about, actually, in some ways, like I said, one of the things that I like about doing this series, actually, because it's built in knowing you're probably going to hate like 80% of it, is the fact that it does make for a lot of interesting discussion because, like in most of our discussions, well, yeah. I mean, it just like these, you know, wildly differing points of view and being able to explore that a little bit. And hey, well, why did this land for you? Why didn't it land for you? You know, that kind of thing. Which then, of course, the community can get something out of. Because usually, we'll, for the most part, agree on stuff, but maybe we'll see, like, different elements of something. And that's usually what we end up discussing, is, like, these different little things. Like, well, yeah, I never thought about that when watching this scene or whatever. But there's not any kind of a diametric point of view where it's, you know, Ronaldo goes on to say, yeah, that's another thing. I really love anime storytelling, so it was easier for me.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a very vital component to this is that anime has its own way of telling stories, and it's not as traditional as what most of us pretty much grew up on. So maybe that's probably why I have such um,
Difficulty.
yes difficulties getting into some of these episodes sometimes.
Yeah. Well, the good news is he says the next episode gives just a bit more context. At least you know what the characters are doing at the beginning, but still keep some mystery. And I think some mystery is
Mm.
fine. I think it's kind of like you
Yeah.
said. You just want to know, all right, where am I? Because again, it probably would be easier if this wasn't even Star Wars related. Although we probably wouldn't be talking about it then, but you know,
Well, especially because it's only 15 minutes too, though. That's the other thing
yeah.
about it. It's like when you don't have as much time, and then you keep me in the dark for the whole. It's like, okay, well, I don't get it to the end, maybe. It's kind of like, all right, whatever.
Well, and that's another good point too, because I think you're right. I think that as you move on in the episode, it gets more clear and more clear. And then all of a sudden, it isn't until the very end that you finally, it's like only at the end do you understand. It's like, and
All right, helps.
that is a very good point, is that some people actually like it better when it's like, hey, just, you don't have to give me the whole thing, but just let me know where we're at here.
Yeah, what are we
Where are
doing?
we? What's going on? What's the basic premise? And that way you can enjoy it throughout rather than I'm completely confused. And again, I think it's because a little bit of the anime style as well, because there's a lot of movies like that everybody's liked, where it'll show some random scene and then it'll go 2 weeks earlier. But still, that's giving you context, though.
Mm-hmm. At least they go back and explain it, and they have time to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Like you said,
absolutely.
it being more than, yeah, being longer than 15 minutes probably is what probably what makes it a little bit easier to digest. And that's why I'm really going to be curious on how well, because again, unlike all the other Star Wars shows, they drop this thing all at once. So all the
Mm-hmm.
episodes are actually out now. I mean, we're reviewing them one a week, but you guys can actually go and just probably clear. I mean, if
Binge
they're,
watch them.
yeah, probably in a couple hours. I mean, if they're all 15 minutes long, there's only 9 of them. I say only, and you're probably like, oh. But I mean, again, I think that what's going to be also interesting about as we move forward with this is that you'll have um, you'll have a bunch of different, not only styles and different characters and different things, but because they're different studios, this isn't all done by one studio. You're also going to have wildly different approaches in how they interpret Star Wars in their particular story or universe.
Yeah, I mean, having people kind of have their own interpretation, it's one thing, and uh, in a way, like the whole painting thing. I mean, I could somewhat see it because who was it? Yeah, Thrawn, like in Rebels, when they talked about the paintings. Remember in Rebels, and Thrawn was talking about like the artwork that was on the wall, and he was like, "Oh, well, this means." So I was like, okay, like even that is not unprecedented in that capacity. But what I'm saying is just like if we're following these characters in a short or such a limited amount of time, we need to know, okay, you know, hey, when she wakes up, it's like, sorry, bud, had another nightmare again. The dark side just keeps trying to pull me back, and I just don't understand why. I left that part of my life alone. But let me go try to take my mind off of it and I paint some trees or something like that. Okay, at least that gives me context. Like there's a couple of pieces of dialogue like that will make me like, okay, she's left the Sith, whatever, and is trying to call her back, and she's just trying to resist it. And then
Well,
as
the
things
weird
go
thing,
on,
I mean, the weird thing about this is the fact that the painting is actually like it's going along with life. I mean, it's at first it's almost like she's just kind of like you said, but then you realize, I mean, there's a part in the episode where she's like, "Wow, no matter what I do, I can't cover this up. It's still dark."
mm-hmm.
And again, the whole painting is representing her. It's representing her inner being or whatever.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's trying to tell her, the force kind of through this painting, I guess, is trying to say, no, you're kind of both. And then she sort of gets it where, she'll pretty much like use the force, and there was some things, and then she instantly turned them from dark into color and all this other stuff. And that's when I think that she understood, right before you saw the corridor again, where she ignited the yellow and then also the red and defeated that Sith Lord. So it was kind of like a commentary on, oh, I'm both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she even said something to that effect, actually. Oh, this is interesting. Ronaldo says, Episode 2 is similar to Luke's trial in the Dagobah cave. Yeah, well, why don't you do this, Ronaldo? In the time you have left, why don't you give the context of what episode 2 is at the time? Yeah. Today's word is context. Today's word is
I
also.
think you mean episode 5, though.
What?
Technically. Well, he said episode 2. Luke's
he
thing
means
in the caves.
no. He means episode 2 of Visions is similar to Luke's trial in the caves.
Oh, okay.
He's trying to give you.
But this
a
is
preview.
episode. Oh, okay. This upcoming one. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, the second episode of the season. So the next one. And then he says, I liked how she stopped trying to erase the darkness and instead she balanced it with the light. Yeah, that was pretty much when she came to understand, because that's really what she was doing. She had escaped the Sith, and she was just trying to cover up the darkness. And of course, it was using this painting, even during a point during the duel where she did something, and then they were in that kind of nice, calm, pastel colored, and the Sith Lord dude was like, "What? This is what you're doing? This is what you think?
Right?
This is what you think you are?" And he was trying to show her, like, no. I mean, and that's what was, because the other thing too as to why she left and then went out on that weird like speeder thing or whatever was because she saw that a meteor had hit, and she thought that it was something that she just needed to go check out, but it was really those 3 Sith Lords that were landing. So, yeah. Well, this ought to be. I can't wait to do this one. How would you rate it? As if I don't know the answer. Well, I don't really know the answer.
You just know it's not above a 5.
Yeah, I know it's not above a 5. It's just how low are we going to actually do this? And try to keep in mind some of the episodes from last season.
I still put this maybe at a 2. It's like, I mean, well, I'll even give it a 3 just because of the animation. The animation really did save this for me. I really love some of the looks that this and like I said, it was very progressive as far as where animation has come, the possibilities, and some of the action stuff was cool. It was just lack of story and context for me. I'll give it a 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it like a 6.5. I was playing between that and a 7. I mean, I really loved the animation. I really enjoyed the story. I thought that the story was fantastic, and the juxtaposition between the painting and what was going on inside of her, I thought it was clever. But I have to say, I would agree that you could look at it like the animation saved it, or you could definitely look at it that the animation was a key component of the whole thing, because
oh yeah, without that, it'd definitely probably be like a 0 for me.
It was really, really really cool to me. Let's see. Ronaldo's got obviously some thoughts here. He says, basically, it's about some workers he's talking about episode 2, getting into a scary place. The ending is understandable, but it doesn't explain some things, and I loved it. He said that's what it's about without spoiling. Now, unsurprisingly, Ronaldo gives it a 9.5 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. But you have to remember that Ronaldo's a huge anime fan. You know, I struggle between 6.5 and 7. The only reason why I gave it a relatively low, because I could have gone 7, maybe even 7.5. It was heavier on the symbolism than it was on anything else.
The context,
which, I mean, I enjoy that, but again, I do think that while I found it incredibly clever, I'm not entirely sure that this is a good opening episode for the season.
It never opened well for me.
Yeah, well, and I remember we said that last time. I think it was either episode, whichever one you really liked. It was either 4 or 5, and you're kind of like, why didn't they open with this? This would have been this would have been the episode. Yes, this is the one.
Yes.
Because if you open strong and you have something that's really cool, you're going to be able to forgive little missteps along the way because you understand what it can be when it's done right, or at least done what you like.
Or there may be more of that to come, so you're kind of hopeful.
Right.
But when you start off, like, you know, it's like any show or something like that, you know, your opening act has to be like the punch that everybody's like, wow, okay, I'm ready to see the rest of the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there may be some other performances that may be lackluster, but then you probably know the closing performance is probably going to be awesome too, because it's closing the show. We got to end it on a good note. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting moving forward to see like where on the scale this thing goes, because whenever we do anything with visions now, especially, and I learned this on the last season, you never really know where they're going to go because there's no real cohesive thing going on. Like we said, it's episodic in nature, but it's also done by completely different studios, and it depends on how much of Star Wars do they want to put into this. And that was other thing that I at least liked about this episode. It felt more like this was a Star Wars thing. Sure, it was a little surreal and kind of weird, but at least I felt like I was kind of in the ballpark. I remember there was a lot of episodes on the last season where we're like, dude, is this even Star Wars? You know, I mean, Did they even ever watch Star Wars at all? Or whereas this, at least the way that it's starting out, it's like, okay, you know, sure, it's a little surreal, weird, you know, kind of odd, but at least when it was getting a little bit more into the meat of the actual story with the Sith Lords and stuff like that, it felt, like you said, like this could be an Old Republic kind of thing. Like if you had stripped the painting and all that stuff out of it and just kind of made this, okay, woman leaves the Sith Order and these other Sith Lord dudes chase her down and she has to then defend herself, but at the same time she has to, even though she's not a Sith, she has both light and dark in her, and it's a struggle. Like if they had just made it the story in a little bit more plain, that's essentially what the story was in this. The painting and symbolism aside, because all that was just the symbol of that story. I mean, at least that feels like it takes place in the Star Wars universe somewhere. Whereas a lot of the stuff from season 1 didn't. It was just kind of out there, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is the one, and we had talked about this, Ronaldo. He says, I can't wait for you to see episode 4. It's the one with the Wallace and Gromit animation.
No.
Well, he said I actually almost cried in that one. Now,
Oh boy.
Daryl will probably be crying through a lot of these episodes. For slightly different reasons, I might add.
Right.
Not because he's touched, But, you know, somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Yes, somebody's going to get force choked. That's what's going to happen.
But you know what? It's not about us, as we always try to say in this show. It's about you guys. And once again, Season 2 of Visions opens the exact same way that Season 1 did for Daryl and I. And that's, I enjoyed it. He didn't. Both of us do applaud the animation, though. And, you know, we're just going to have to see where we go. So if you really want to see a true head-to-head, tune in Monday. There might be some episodes, though, because there were a couple of them where we were both just tearing on the thing, and it was Ronaldo that actually was like, no, you guys don't get it, you know? And we're like, you don't like it.
I don't know.
You know?
Just don't like it.
It's kind of that simple. But if you guys like what you see, make sure you hit that like button, because it really does help the channel. And it puts us basically in front of more people. And we really like to see likes on our videos. It's actually kind of nice. And if you haven't had a chance to hit that subscribe button, make sure you do that. Hit the notification bell, because, of course, you'll be alerted every time we go live if you do that. And we don't really know what we're talking about Friday yet, do we?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, you guys are just going to have to watch us on Friday and find out. Generally speaking, I mean, at least until another series drops or something, now it's going to go back to basically discussing
new stuff,
whatever's in the news, or, you know, pretty much whatever we think you guys would enjoy. But if there is something you guys want us to talk about and want to talk about with us, leave a comment in the comment section. And of course, don't forget, comment on this episode. Let us know what you guys thought. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Was there anything that you did like about it or didn't like about it? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. All right, well, we made it through episode 1 of Visions, season 2.
8 more to go.
8 more to go. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
Reluctantly, I might add. May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.